Turkish president claims this operation will be completed in a very short time. But what about long-term implications for Turkey, Syria, and the United States? Goran Zaneti joins me now from San Francisco. He's a writer and political analyst with a background in U.S. foreign policy and conflicts in the Middle East. Welcome, sir. I want to begin by asking you about this conflict right now. Turkey launches shelling against YPG-led Kurds in northern Syria, while the United States claims that it is a terrorist organization. There seems to be a conflict of interest between Washington and Istanbul, isn't it?
Yeah, the United States does not regard the Syrian Democratic Forces, the SDF, to be a terrorist organization. The Turkish government regards them as the same as the PKK, which is the Kurdish group fighting for Kurdish autonomy in Turkey. So there is a difference of views there. The attacks or the offensive rather, by the Turkish government, by the Turkish military, is against the town of Afrin. There is really no U.S. or coalition presence there. So the U.S. has largely left this, in the hands of the Russians to deal with Turkey on this.
What do you think Damascus' reaction will be? Because after all, Syria is a sovereign, independent country, and Turkey launches operations inside that very country.
Yeah, absolutely. The initial reaction from Assad's regime was that any Turkish aircrafts that came into Syrian airspace would be shot down, but that seemed to be a pretty hollow threat. Turkey has conducted something, greater than 100 airstrikes in the region. Assad's regime, although they have condemned the incursion, they've also stated that Turkey supports terrorism. They made that statement, a few hours earlier. But they have kept a sort of hands-off approach. I think Assad stands to somewhat benefit from this because right now the area in Afrin, the town and the villages surrounding it, are under local administration, namely the Kurdish forces. Assad would obviously like to reclaim this territory, and so perhaps he's waiting for the right time to do that.
Well, Turkish President Erdogan also says that the ground offensive will be carried out by Turkey-backed Syrian opposition fighters. How do you evaluate that claim?
Well, yeah, that's true. Turkey has aligned itself with various Syrian factions. They are participating in the ground incursions, but this seems to predominantly be a Turkish military operation. There seems to be a lot more Turkish involvement than there is Syrian involvement. And one thing to really note in what makes this even more problematic for the United States is that a lot of the Syrian groups in this newly branded FSA have previous ties with Al-Qaeda, some of them working directly with Al-Qaeda, some of them in cahoots. And so this is really problematic because Turkey is making the claim that it is trying to clear Afrin from terrorist elements, which it regards the SDF, but they are, they've aligned with elements that could pose a direct threat to U.S. forces, in fact.
Well, finally, I want to talk about the role of the United States. The U.S. and Turkey do not precisely see eye to eye with each other on this precise issue. Where do you see this going?
Well, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens once the majority of the Afrin operation, slows down. It seems that Turkey is attempting to go as far as Tel Rifat, which is to the east of Afrin, and they might just, surround the town of Afrin, and it's unclear whether they will actually do a full-on invasion. I think that'll be very difficult, as the Kurds have pledged to fully resist any invasion of the town. But what is really concerning, in particular for the United States, is Turkey's threats to next take the town of Manbij, which is a base for the Joint Task Force and the U.S. and coalition forces in the fight against ISIS. So that would put the Turkish troops, or perhaps the Turkish-backed Syrian forces, in direct conflict with the U.S. and coalition forces.